Chapter 1, Lesson 6 in Geometry. This is video C. We've looked at angles, how to name them, what they look like, characteristics. We looked at measuring angles. Now we're going to look at classifying these angles, or actually giving them a name based upon their measure. So now that we know how to measure the angle, based upon their measure, angles have different names. And there are 4 different names that we're going to look at. The first one is what we call an acute angle. An acute angle is any angle whose measure is between 0 and 90. Notice x here, which is the measure of the angle, is between 0 and 90. So an acute angle is any angle that's less than 90 degrees, but also greater than 0. Okay, that would be an acute angle. The next angle that we look at is what we call a right angle. And a right angle is any angle that measures exactly 90 degrees. So the measure of a right angle is exactly 90. And it's very important here. We've been talking a lot about symbols this year, and we'll continue to talk about them. Right here, this is the right angle symbol. So as soon as I see that symbol in any diagram, automatically I think, oh, that's a right angle. And because it's a right angle, I know its measure. What is its measure? 90. And again, knowing that relationship and then knowing what that is going to allow you to determine solutions later on. Okay, but we have to understand the geometry part. The geometry is a right angle is an angle that measures 90, and this is the symbol that you'll see in a diagram. If you do not see that symbol, then you do not know that it's a 90-degree angle. The next type of angle is what we call an obtuse angle. An obtuse angle. Why are you being so obtuse? What movie is that from? Shawshank Redemption. An obtuse angle is any angle that measures is in between 90 and 180. So it's more than 90. It cannot be 90, because what would it be if it was exactly 90? It would be a right angle. It can't be both. And it's less than 180. So any angle that's more than 90, less than 180 is considered an obtuse angle. Okay, an obtuse angle looks more like this. Okay, and then our last type of angle that we have is what we call a straight angle. Now there are a number of characteristics about a straight angle that are going to be very, very helpful as we move throughout the year. First of all, a straight angle is exactly 180 degrees. And you'll notice that it is basically a straight line. So here's a key concept. Any straight line that you see is a 180-degree angle. Okay, make that connect. Any straight line that you have is equal to 180. And again, in order to figure out or determine the value of x's, we need to establish relationships. And relationships are established by definitions, postulates, or theorems. And here's a very important definition, that any straight line you see is actually, or can be translated into, x equals, or the angle equals 180. So this is what you would see when you're talking about a straight angle. Okay. So next we have congruent angles. And again, we've seen this word before, congruent. Do you remember what it means? There's 2 things that we said congruent, that congruent symbol means. It means, number 1, they're equal in measure, and then the similar, they're also similar in shape. Okay, so congruent angles are angles with the same measure. Okay, so we've told that before. So if you looked at this diagram here of the blue angels flying here, the angle that you'll see here, angle 1 and angle 2, are congruent. Now, we talked about tick marks earlier this year, tick marks on segments, and you remember that tick marks on segments are these little lines, and if you have 1 on both, that means they're equal. Well, we have tick marks for angles that are a little bit different, and they're these little arcs that you see here that touch both sides of the angle. So anytime you see angles that have the same number of arcs, those are the tick marks, which are identifying congruent angles. So in this diagram, this angle 1 right here and this angle 2 have 1 arc each, so that means that these 2 angles are congruent. Then if you look at this angle over here, what type of angle is that, by the way? Do you know? It's an obtuse angle, right? So this has 2 of those little arcs, and this angle here has 2 of those little arcs. So that means that these 2 angles are congruent to each other. So congruent angles have the same measure, and you can identify those again in what we call tick marks but those tick marks look a little bit different than they would on lines. They're little arcs instead. Okay, so there's 4 types of angles that you need to know. Know their measures, know what their characteristics are, and then know what congruent angles are. Those are going to be your reasons for allowing you to write those mathematical expressions, which then will allow you to determine the solution as we move forward.